In your health headlines, it's a disease we typically associate with older age, but that's not always the case. Early onset Alzheimer's often appears when someone is in their 40s or 50s, and because doctors aren't looking for signs of Alzheimer's in middle-aged people, the disorder often goes undetected. Tonight, Dr. Mitchel Goldman, Dr. G from UCSD is here to talk more about this. Thanks for being here.
Always good to be here, Kathleen.
We often lump together dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Explain the difference.
Well, dementia is basically a broad spectrum of lots of different diseases of the brain, and Alzheimer's disease basically makes up about 65% of what dementia is. And just last week, Pat Summitt actually passed away of early onset Alzheimer's disease, and that's why I thought it would be good to talk about it, because she was only 61 years old when she passed away. About 5.5 million people in the United States have Alzheimer's disease, and about 200,000 have early onset.
Well, let's go through the stages of Alzheimer's, because it felt like with Pat Summitt in particular that the diagnosis and then her death were not that far apart.
Because what happens is, even in Alzheimer's disease, it only takes 5 to 8 years to actually die from it. So you can see here the early signs. The early signs are very mild, and that's why some doctors and people just don't understand or can diagnose it real quickly. What happens is you just sort of forget where you put your keys, but when it starts to get serious is when you actually put your keys in, like, the refrigerator or the oven, and you really don't know what's going on. And when it starts to become even worse, where you don't remember people and you don't recognize faces, that's when we start to have the severe symptoms and it becomes more obvious. But everyone can forget someone's name, and everyone can forget 1 or 2 meetings that they have to go to. But when it's every day, when things get worse and worse, and actually when you start forgetting loved ones, that's when it becomes more severe.
So who gets the early onset Alzheimer's? Who's most susceptible to that?
It's mostly a genetic or familial problem. So it runs in the family. Of course, other things like severe head trauma, having repetitive strokes, things like that will also make it worse. So there is a heart-brain connection. So if you have heart disease, it's going to get worse as well. And again, severe head trauma where you become unconscious multiple times.
Let's run through the risk factors. We actually have put something together for that. And what are these telling us when we look at these?
Well, the most important risk factor is actually age. The older you are, the more likely you are to get Alzheimer's. And it's actually been predicted that Alzheimer's is going to double in the next 20 years just because our population is getting older. Family history is a risk factor. And then almost every time we come on, we talk about things like exercise and heart disease. And so other risk factors are having heart disease, again, having concussions, and not doing enough exercise.
And Dr. G, is there anything that can be done to prevent this and be proactive in any way or lower your odds? Because it's one of those diseases that some of us just feel is inevitable, so why bother?
Well, everyone doesn't get it, but the things that are listed that we talk about for most diseases are what we should pay attention to. Now, one of the things I want to get across are things that make no sense. In the olden days, people said that getting the flu shot was going to make you have Alzheimer's, and it's actually the exact opposite. So there's no association with things like flu shot, no association with things like eating off aluminum pans. So there's a lot of misconceptions, but all you have to do is we have to try to stay healthy, get plenty of exercise, and that's basically the best way to do it.
So part of the argument is simply debunking the myths. Dr. G, thank you for your time today.
It's always good to be here.